Sipal, so you can start. Sipal, sir, you can start, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, learned speaker, honorable delegates who are there on the ring side, and all the registered members of this webinar. As the president of NISPER, it is my proud privilege to welcome you all on this international webinar, which indeed, the subject of which is indeed of great topical interest. We have with us certain learned speakers who will be introduced to you by the chairman, and I'm sure from their deliberations, you will be able to have many points to take away and ponder over. Once again, I welcome you all on this webinar. A word about NISMA. As the president of NISMA, I'd like to give a very brief history, a synopsis of NISMA as such. This National Institute of Security, Safety, Management and Applied Technology was established about 3 decades back. We started with courses concerning security, safety, and applied technology. Due to our very well and precise curriculum and very well conducted courses, this institution attained a place of prominence as far as the security and safety subjects was concerned. The skill and knowledge which this was tried to impart related specifically at that time to those competencies, that is the competencies concerning security, safety, management and applied technology. Now, its specialization in imparting these trainings also on the subjects of loss prevention, risk mitigation, safety and security audits, security surveys, made it an institution of prominence as far as these particular competencies are concerned. In the field of integrated security technology and cost-effective security management programs, we also gained recognition. With the passage of time, we also organized courses for certain government.
Okay. Now.
Perfect. Mute continue, sir. Please mute yourself.
Okay.
As private security in the private security industry. Having now recently, in the recent past, we have established a research center and a think tank in various important spectrums and specializations. This institution aspires to become a well-renowned and global training institution as far as these spectrums are concerned, with their research programs and also innovative procedures and methods to improve productivity and performance. This is a brief about NISWA. Let me give you a brief about our chairman. Our chairman, Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia, or I will call it Captain Pawan Ahluwalia, is with us, and he has a pan-India holding company under his belt, Ahluwalia Holdings. I'd like to inform or share with you that Pawan Ahluwalia took voluntary retirement from the parachute regiment of the Indian Army at a very young age. An officer of a daredevil regiment like the parachute regiment, he did not hesitate to take a risk at that young age by abandoning probably an illustrious career, and he did not want to venture into the safety, into the sort of cushy job and remain there. He didn't want to get seduced into the safety environment of a career. Thus, he started taking the risk and started his business enterprises. Today, with his continuous perseverance and at times learning from some pitfalls as he grew in his industry or in business, he has evolved and achieved a position of prominence in the business world. I have been associated with him for long years, and I can say without any fear of contradiction and with all the emphasis at my command that he is really a go-getter and has been a lifelong learner. He is humble, but seeks constant improvement. Humility does not mean that he will not give thrust to his employees or to his colleagues in the team. He is a founder member of International Business Research Association, Hong Kong, and is also a member of the World Association of Detectives. He has been the past president and a former chairman of Council of International Investigations, USA. He believes in the principle that mere knowledge without action, to keep your thoughts only in the process of realm of dreams is no longer required. Action is required. An awardee of Malcolm Thompson Award and Cotelia Award by Council of International Investigators. He is our chairman and is going to moderate the session. A few words about the subject of discussion today, that is unemployment, how there is any contextual relationship between unemployment and violence. I'd like to emphasize, though the speakers will give at length during the deliberation, actually there is no such empirical or authentic data to support that unemployment and violence are directly related to each other. There is a relationship, but can it be a direct relationship? Is it exactly that the unemployment increases, hence the violence increases, or there is violence more and the unemployment is more? I mean, there is not such empirical data, yet the studies do indicate that there is some linkage between violence and unemployment. Now, unemployed youth normally suffers from certain handicaps, and that handicaps at times take him to such organization, to such political or radical organization which want to motivate these people and take them to their sides. And they in turn indulge in violence. That is an indirect way in which we can say the unemployed youth can indulge in violence. Similarly, there are also studies that as far as domestic violence is concerned, the person who is not fully employed or who is irregularly employed, he at times is supposed to indulge in intemperate behavior and domestic violence. These studies, of course, are there that mostly these people have been either unemployed or they have not been able to get the income due for their family, and therefore they are indulging in that. In any case, the direct relationship has not been established, and it is for our speakers today to deliberate and let us know if there is any direct relation. Of course, I like to emphasize one more point. That is the economic instability or lack of economic growth and violence are at times related. If there is a violence, there is a lack of economic growth. But direct employment vis-a-vis violence is not yet established. With these words, introducing the subject, I will pass on the proceedings of the session to our chairman, Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia, to introduce the speakers and also to moderate the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much. I would take a minute and sort of like to thank the participants who have come in from different countries. We have representation from 15 countries today, there being India, USA, Singapore, Pakistan, Nigeria, Egypt, France, Ireland, Spain, Bangladesh, Germany, Kenya, Somalia, and the UAE, and our speaker is also from Brussels. I'd also take a minute to thank the sponsor of the event, that's Premier Shield. And Premier Shield is represented today by Gurinder Singh, Mandeep, and Gagan, who are representing the sponsors organization. This event is also Ag Scores, India Skills, Premier Consultancy and Investigations, HubSpot, and JMD Cargo. I would like to introduce, before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to our president. Our president is a very illustrious person. He is a master's in English literature, and he has served the Indian Police Service in various senior appointments of the country. He was made responsible by the government of India to raise a new force, that is the Rapid Action Force. He was appointed the first chief of this elite police force in India. He also raised and then headed Internal Security Academy, a central police academy at Mount Abu in Rajasthan, India. During his service career, he was decorated with the President Police Medal for Distinguished Services, the Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service, Police Special Duty Medal with Bar, Sena Medal, and a number of other commendation and rewards. After retirement, he has been an outstanding person. He has been awarded and recognized by the President of India in a ceremony in the Vigyan Bhavan. And he has also been honored by various governors of various states. Today, he advises the Asian Professional Security Association, the Indian chapter, and is the Honorary Director General for CAPSI, that's the Central Association of Private Security Industry in India, and the Association of Private Detectives and Investigators in India. Mr. Sipal Singh's face is well known in the country as a dynamic security professional who has appeared in a number of interviews at the national television channels. This gentleman was our president. Now I will introduce Dr. Vikram Singh, our first speaker of the day. Dr. Vikram Singh is a former police officer from the Indian Police Service. He is a former Director General of Police of the state of Uttar Pradesh in India, which has the largest police force in the world, consisting of 190,000 personnel. He is one of the most highly decorated police officers in India. He has relentlessly fought against national, international terrorist outfits and organized crime syndicates. He has directly worked for the modernization and induction of state-of-the-art technology and universal best practices to make police effective and people-friendly. He is rated as a star trader and speaker on issues related to security, man management, crisis resolution, team building, and ethics. He is a master's from Allahabad University and a PhD from the Kumaon University. He currently works as the Chancellor of the Noida International University in India. He has been a guest speaker in several prestigious organizations and is regularly called upon to present his views on the Indian television. If you go over the awards and accolades that he has, I don't think there's any other police officer in the country who has got and received as many awards from the President of India as he has. He's a TEDx speaker and has had 4 publications to his name. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Vikram Singh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, sir, Mr. President, sir, it's my proud privilege to share this vibrant platform and discuss a matter of very great importance and relevance, not only to India, but the world over. The question whether unemployment is in any way related to violence is a question that has involved the best brains of crime, criminology, and social sciences the world over. But the signals are very clear. The Honorable President in his opening remarks very clearly mentioned that there may not be very great empirical and scientific evidence. Nevertheless, meetings like these go to indicate that there is a problem, that problems needs to be understood, and after understanding the problems, address the fault lines, because those who are unemployed are extremely volatile and sensitive human material that need to be handled with extreme care and caution. And any slip up here can have disastrous consequences. And therefore, I would like to compliment Nisbat, the Honorable President and the Honorable Chairman, for coming out with something that is most contemporary and relevant to the entire world. There are those amongst us who have hands-on experience, who have an experience of a lifetime, what really is the ground reality. And I also try to place before you universal facts and positions. The fact of the matter is that the problem is genuine and it has been aggravated by the horrific pandemic that the world is facing today. It is difficult to find a single nation, a single person on the planet who has not been negatively impacted by the pandemic. We can see it in 2 situations. One is the violence and one is the fallout of crime. The violence takes the form of riots, arson, rash and negligent driving, also translates to crime. We will go in brief and then see what can be the remedial steps and what can be the corrective measures, how to set things and how to set our own houses in order. Next, please. You can see that rioting has always been a major problem for the law enforcement agencies. But in the last 24 months and the last 12 months, especially, rioting, especially industrial riots, have increased manyfold, not only in India, but in many corners of the globe. We will study how in Korea, how in Spain, how in the European countries, in the US, riots have increased. Why? The underlying factor is large-scale terminations, wage cuts, retrenchments, and that has been the cause. It has had a very horrific impact in India, not only in northern India, Gurgaon, Noida, Kanpur, but the entire country. And we had similar incidents, unfortunate and tragic incidents the world over. If you go to see the main reasons, we had expected a lot, not only from the management to be vibrant, to be sensitive, but also from the unions. But it seems to be a cumulative failure, a cumulative setback, setting off a chain reaction that had very negative impact, not only on the industrial output, on the GDP, on the economy, but all across. There are important lessons to be drawn and how to do and what not to do in case of such situations. Even if a retrenchment has to happen, even if the wage cuts have to happen, there could always be a better way or a more humane way of ensuring the wage cuts and the terminations. There could have been reallocations, there could have been staggering, or there could have been some kind of a roadmap to ensure that ugly incidents did not happen. I would not like to shock your sensibilities as we go through one by one, because time is less. I will just run through the various incidents. Next, please. You can see that industrial violence at times result in losses of millions and millions of dollars, and also the man hours that are wasted. We will see how the production of a single factory translates into a loss of almost 340 crores of rupees, or even more than 500 crores of rupees in just a single factory. If we multiply it across to all the factories and all the, it will be an absolute self-goal and a disaster, unmitigated disaster at that. Next, please. As I said before, and I reiterate, we had expected a lot from the trade unions to be proactive, to be a buffer, a shock absorber between the management and the workers. Unfortunately, this does not happen in very many cases. And the result is right in front of all of us to see that it was a tragedy unfolding, a tragedy that was in waiting, and a tragedy that was absolutely avoidable. Had we had people like our chairman and the president who had the ability to foresee, mitigate, prevent, and avoid these disasters, each and every one of them was preventable and avoidable. The human tragedy and the economic loss was totally preventable. We can draw our lessons from them, and then we will go as to what the scientists, the social scientists, and those who have studied have to say on the problem. Next, please. The industrial violence, you can see the storm in the horizon. They are predictable. We do not allow grass to grow underneath our feet. And if we have allowed the grass to grow underneath our feet, we ourselves are to blame. We should have seen the signs of disturbances. We could have noticed the adverse intelligence reports coming to us, our own sources of intelligence, both human and technical, that things are not normal. We could have read the faces of our employees and seen everything is not all right. We were noticing that there were signs of disturbances, leaflets being circulated, the social media full of disturbing reports and promoting violence, get-togethers, inflammatory speeches. What more evidence was required to understand that it is not novel and one can expect disturbance in foreseeable future? Obviously, this was absolutely preventable, but for whatever reasons, because of the law and order machinery being totally stretched, overworked, overburdened, there was no proactive effort on the part of the management and the law enforcement agencies. Next, please. You see the consequences and the agitations in the major industries. The Honda motorcycle, which resulted in more than 100 people injured and 25 policemen were seriously injured. Next, please. The Graziano transmission in 2008 was one of the major tragedies of northern India, where the CEO was battered and bludgeoned to death in Noida. You can see the grieving family on the left-hand side. It was best avoided. I know the administration and the police had to come down like a ton of bricks on them, but this is not the solution. Any drastic action and imprisoning a couple of hundred work staff and putting them behind bars and invoking the harshest provisions is also not a solution. It may give like a painkiller, a temporary solution, but it is like I do not chop off my head to cure and address a headache. The headache has to be addressed. It is not, the solution is not in chopping off my head. Similarly, there were always better ways of handling a situation, but yes, these catastrophes and these situations had the better of the administration and also had the better of the management. Next, please. Mahindra and Mahindra, one of the most bluest of the blue chip companies in the country, and the production of around 6,000 units amounting to 325 crores was the consequence of the agitation here. Next, please. Tricol 2009 again, Coimbatore. And again, I would like to, when I'm discussing this, the Sterilite agitation that took place a couple of years ago, which resulted in police firing and then the CBI inquiry ordered by the Supreme Court of India. Wanton and disproportionate use of force by the police is often the complaint. The police, as a consequence, takes its time to react, to use force, and by the time the delayed response comes beyond the scope of the internal security scheme. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a scheme in India that every district has an internal security scheme, that every government agency is geared to react in a manner that in case of such disturbance, what is the duty, what will be the priorities, and how will the law enforcement agencies react. But once, like a house of cards gets disoriented, gets dislodged, then the reaction is knee-jerk. And if it's knee-jerk, it's bound to be unprofessional. And then you have a problem at hand. Disproportionate use of force, as in the case of Sterlite agitation, as in the case of Pricol agitation, unfortunate killings by police firings, and then the Supreme Court takes cognizance of the matter and orders a CBI inquiry, leading to demoralization of the police force and also scaring the factory administration and the management also. Next, please. The RICO Industries, again, and 90,000 workers, and it left absolutely the factory in tatters and almost on the verge of financial bankruptcy, and the ramifications were felt right across where the Ford Motor Company had a presence globally, because the parts and the material were supplied to all the sister concerns, both in the US and the world across. The Ontario plant, they all suffered because of the agitation in the RICO auto industries. Next, please. The Hyundai Motors 2010, I think I'll have to skip through. Next, please. MRF Tires 2010. Next. Maruti Suzuki was another something closer home in Gurgaon. This was another disaster where our Japanese consultants and experts were also brutalized by a violent mob, and it translated into a loss of almost $296 million. Next, please. Bosch 2014, and this was again around 2,575 permanent, 370 temporary workers were part of the strike, and it led to violence that lasted for more than 2 weeks, leading to financial disaster and also a distrust between the workers and the management. Next, please. Here also an iconic factory, like the Toyota Motor Corporation, had an unseemly and unprecedented incidents where 700 to 800 contract laborers suffered, and there was a 40% decline in the production, and it took some time before the factory and the production came back on the rails. Next, please. You see the impact on the economy, the overall distrust, damaging as it is to the credibility of the factory. Its material consequences are worse still. In 2014, it translated into 342 billion. The economic impact of rioting is economy, nervous tourists, perverse incentives. But the bottom line is, what has unemployment got to do with violence? And again, the underlying, the intelligence reports and the police reports, the district reports go to say it is because of the retrenchment, underemployment, wages cut, that probably was the triggering operation of these riots. It is not that the riots came about spontaneously. No, there was no spontaneity. If there were wage cut, if there were retrenchments, if there were mass dismissals and unemployment rose, that is attributed to these unfortunate violent incidents all across. Next, please. Also, apart from the fact there were wanton destruction of government and private property also. Apart from the fact the industrial violence in northern India and the world over, you have seen where the unemployed youth indulge in arson and wanton destruction of property, especially burning of petrol pumps, etc. And this is not only a phenomenon that happens in India. As we go across, we will see it has happened almost in all parts of the world, but this needs to be understood. Has unemployment got to do anything? Those who are arrested, a large majority, and it is said, 1 or 2 research papers say that those arrested for such kind of rioting and arson, 75% are those who are unemployed youth. And unemployed youth, the age profile of which is between 20 to 35. Unemployed, and then when I go to crime, we'll discuss crime also. When it comes to crime also is an aspect. The president had mentioned domestic violence, unemployment, and prolonged unemployment has ramifications that lead to psychosomatic changes, that lead to loss of self-esteem, that also lead to depression, suicidal tendencies, and a person gets desperate and unfortunately takes to substance abuse and alcoholism. Drunken driving and wanton and irresponsible behavior and conduct are also consequences of unemployment. Next, please. Strikes that happened in Hyundai in South Korea. Next, please. South Africa also is a part of the same malaise. Next. These are eminent authors who have made extensive studies in respect of violence and unemployment, and their studies and their conclusions are indeed very path-breaking. Now the next slide, please. They say that had unemployment been 1% higher in 1992 in the United States, the crime figures would have been 500,000 more. So this is a direct correlation between unemployment and the crime. The predictions are not on the basis of any figment of anybody's imagination, but on statistical and mathematical tools used by very illustrious academicians. And here is a scary prospect and the predicament that we are witnessing just now. Just 1% higher in 1992, and the snowballing impact would have been, crime would have been almost 500,000 statistically higher. Then we go to what would have been the crimes. What would have been the level of crime? What were the types of crime? We have all kinds of crimes on the horizon against property and against person. Domestic violence is one that has increased manyfold. And the tragedy of the whole thing that in two heads of crime and domestic violence, that the number of complaints represent only the tip of the iceberg, that they represent only a small fraction of the actual number of incidents that are happening, for obvious reasons, because of the battering. But it is gratifying to note, Prashansha Srivastav, a research scholar of Delhi University, has concluded only in one head of crime, ladies and gentlemen, and it is a matter to ponder upon, that there is no correlation between the incidence of rapes and unemployment. I'll repeat that there is no coincidence between the increase in the number of rapes and unemployment. To the contrary, those arrested for the rape incidents were not those who were unemployed or those who had any problem in respect of their livelihood. Therefore, there is no correlation in respect of rape and unemployment. But when it comes to all other heads of crime, starting from domestic violence to bank robberies, to car thefts, purse snatchings, mobile snatchings, attack on the elderly couples and the senior citizens, also bank frauds, other cyber crime, the conclusions are very obvious. They are all first timers. Most of them are first timers. I would say not all, but 75% are those who are first timers. 75% are those who are unemployed. And here it is what the problem which all of us have to address, the collective wisdom of Nisbat, of sociologists, the economists, the policymakers, the law enforcement agencies will have to come together, put their best foot forward, because this, again, as I mentioned before, and I reiterate, is a very volatile commodity and will have to be addressed very, very appropriately. Otherwise, we have a very scary situation that we'll inherit and we'll have to address with compound interest in times to come if we sweep the problem underneath the carpet. Now, in Kerala, Jacob Punus, the chief of police, mentions that they are first timers and they have a problem at hand, the unemployed youth. It has been almost assumed epidemic proportions, the attack on the senior citizens, bank frauds, snatching of mobile phones. And Fabian Baby, the head of Indian Institute of Forensic Sciences and Criminology, says that yes, it is a fact that unemployment and violence and crime, there's a correlation among this. These three are so closely intertwined that it is difficult to distinguish one from the other. If that be the case of these two illustrious speakers, we have another illustrious police officer, Police Commissioner Gupta of Pune, who says that 800 young prisoners have been set loose, have been on parole, but it takes all that the Pune police has to put them under surveillance, keep the surveillance areas open. And indeed, there is a document in every police station that goes by the name of active list, wanted list. In Hindi, they say Kriyashil Apradhi Register, so that the documentation in respect of all the first timers are made. But since an accused has no criminal history whatsoever, it is very difficult for the police and the Thana police and the police station police to maintain a dossier or a history sheet, because he's a first timer and has no criminal record whatsoever. And here also there is a problem. Surveillance is no solution, whether electronic or human. It has to be at a different level. And then when we talk of solutions and the success stories, that is where we will go and understand how to set about addressing a problem of first-time offenders, the educated unemployed, the underemployed, and what are the human and the humane way of addressing this problem. They cannot be cut and dried solutions, because things vary from place to place. What may be relevant in Delhi may not be so relevant in Chennai. What may be relevant in Chennai may not be relevant in Kolkata. Therefore, we have to customize and also alter our response depending on what the situation is. Next, please. Again, in respect of, there's another study from Sweden, which gives about the ground reality of Sweden. Next, please. The relationship between unemployment and crime, and explicitly states that unemployment is a major contributory factor and a strong association with violent crime. And these are very illustrious investigators, social scientists, who have come to this conclusion. On one hand, we understood what happened in USA and what the studies reveal for the USA and what the studies reveal and predict for Sweden. And it is as if it is not just for Sweden and USA, it is for the world over, that there seems to be a close link between violence and unemployment. And here are the two studies. There's only one study of Prashansa Srivastava of Delhi University who says that there is no correlation between rape and unemployment. But all other scientists right across have come to the conclusion that there is a deep connect between unemployment and violence and crime. Next, please. There are many dimensions of violence. It could be hate crime. I wish I'd have some time more, but I know my time is running out and I have to sum up in the next 5 or 7 minutes. Ethnic hate crimes, rape, murder, attack on the elderly, and last but not the least, we would be failing in our duty if we were not to mention police brutality too. Violence takes its toll. The duty that the law enforcement agencies have to undertake, working for more than 18 hours continuously without leave, without rest, without catching on the sleep, information overload, sleep deprivation, overwork for weeks together, makes a person and a police officer come on tenterhooks, and his behavior becomes irritable and unpredictable. And that is why it is a tragic, it's a matter of extreme concern that violations of human rights have figured in the top list as far as police are concerned in the last 12 months. Whether because of the pandemic, there have been success stories, there have been cases of tremendous appreciation of a corona warriors of which police come in the forefront. But unfortunately, there have been cases, totally avoidable cases, deplorable cases of police brutality which were best avoided. It is now for the police leadership to come up and ensure that one has to give a humane face, come out with a human solution, because brutality is not the solution. And whenever there is any evidence of police brutality, it is an administrative tragedy and need not only to be nipped in the bud, but crushed in the bud. Next, please. There are success stories, and I would rate the success stories that are replicable the world over. And these success stories are from the world over. How best to address it? Human intelligence. Everything in respect of violence and crime is predictable, and therefore human intelligence is of paramount importance. The police documentation, the police intelligence network need to work over time to ensure that they know where the fault lines are, where the sensitivity is, where are the gray areas, time, place, circumstances, and individuals. Where is the next violent incident going to happen? It is within the ambit. Your president can tell you very well how a professional police officer and an intelligence organization can predict by doing extensive homework and understand and predict what is likely to happen. And in more than 90%, they will be most accurate. 90% is the accuracy level of anyone who's professional and dedicated. Technical intelligence. When I say technical intelligence, I mean surveillance. Surveillance not only by human beings, but also by CCTV, duly supported and backed up by software, so that it is not a force multiplier par excellence, and that CCTV network duly coupled. We do not have to manually scan the CCTVs. The software will tell us what the gray areas are, and whatever we flag, every incident can be programmed. If a person is trying to visit, if a person is carrying something that is not natural or usual, if a person is frequenting a place of worship many times, doing a surveillance or a lookup, it can always be gathered by the CCTV, and the software will flag that images, and the law enforcement agency will certainly identify that person, that bag, that individual. Face recognition software have come of age. They can be utilized, but only for past criminals, criminals who have had a past, only them. New criminals, person who's committing crime for the first time, may not come in the radar. The police leadership have a very special role to play to train and upgrade the skills of the police officers and the law enforcement agencies, not only in respect of intelligence, but also to give a humane solution and a humane touch to this problem. Also, intelligence collection is both a science and an art. The community participation is by far the best solution. When the community interface and community policing are there, whatever is happening, the community policing outfit has the pulse and whatever is happening, and can very well understand and gauge the undercurrent of what is happening in society, and therefore it is predictable. Whatever is happening, the best person to know that is the community. So that have the community on the social media, a WhatsApp group and an Instagram group or a signal group, so that even the smallest of incident does not go by default. It comes to the notice of the police agencies, and a reaction and an intervention is there at the time of the deed. Next, please. The private security agencies are a force multiplier, and their use is optimum, and they have been used with tremendous success the world over as a force multiplier. Both in community policing, except investigation, they can be used for all aspects of police work, and that would include bank security, right up to escort of prisoners and handling the jails. Next, please. Coming to technology, we also have the latest intervention of machine learning, as with big data, but we also have the intervention of machine learning and the latest record of violence, and in respect of how to incorporate crime against property, burglary, auto theft, other violence, arson, looting, rioting, they can be incorporated, and the correlation between the statistical correlation between gross district domestic product and the correlation between these offenses, so that you have a model that can predict a possible offense, that can predict a possible act of violence. This is where the success lies. Therefore, the use of technology, the drone, robotics, big data analytics, machine learning, would surely be force multipliers, and they can be put to optimum use. The correlation between, next please. The correlation between violence and unemployment has been a matter of great philosophy and sublime literature, as our Honorable President would know. Les Miserables of Victor Hugo is one great example, which would give the example of what unemployment, how it can radically change the thinking and the mindset of any human being, because every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. As in Les Miserables, it is not for us to be judgmental, but yes, again, the bishop's candlesticks is an indication that yes, a humane touch, effective policing, A no-nonsense approach to violence is the only solution. A robust economy that can give jobs, optimum employment, and ensure that the salaries are not undercut, there are no retrenchments. It may not be possible to have a no retrenchment situation, but it is possible for a robust economy to accommodate the maximum number of eligible people. With these words, I think that this problem is perfectly doable to identify the causes, the consequences, and address the loopholes and the fault lines, plug them, and have a backup, and have a backup for a backup, and have a backup for a backup for a backup. And I'm sure, I don't say that we can totally minimize violence, but we can scale it down to the barest 10%. Thank you very much for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. President and Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vikram Singh. I think your talk has been very illuminating, and there would be several takeaways for each person who has heard you speak today. Thank you very much, sir. I would now like to introduce Dr. Mark Bissons, who's our speaker from Brussels today. Mark believes that the private security industry is an extension of the law enforcement agencies. Mark, since his beginning of the career, has been in the group's management team for one of the largest security companies of the world. He has been the president of the aviation business worldwide, and the letter representing more than 32,000 security officers employed over 280 airports in 36 countries and exceeding a revenue of $950 million. Whereas aviation has always been his primary target, Mark Bissons strongly believes that mutual recognition and good understanding between the authorities and the private sector are vital to the execution of outstanding security services. A legal framework, execution by the private, and a good control by the government are the basics of a professional industry. Mark started his career in the security sector in 1985. He was appointed president of the Belgian Association of Security Services from 1996 to 2002. In 1999, he also became vice president and president in 2002, and still is the president of the Confederation of the European Security Services. Since the beginning, he has been involved in setting standards and the elaboration of rules and regulations for the security industry in Europe. Both COESS and ASSAI are dedicated knowledge centers, both for the security industry and the European Union Commission. The COESS working groups are members of numerous numbers of projects and commissions of the European Union Commission and the European Parliament. Mark speaks fluent Dutch, French, English, and German, which is a rare combination. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Mr. Mark Bissons.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is an honor and certainly a privilege to speak to you today. Certainly, I will not repeat what our previous speaker has said. Of course, I don't find myself being a university professor, but somebody with his feet standing in the business every day, you know, in the company to earn money and make profits, but also, as been well said, I have been interested since 1985 in the role private security has in our daily life. And I remember in 1985, a guard in the private security was actually a poor profession, you know, badly paid. And We had to move it if we wanted to achieve something. Now, talking about my background, like has been said, I've been 35 years in the industry and I've traveled the world. Of course, I have been also responsible for the company for Africa, Middle East, Asia, and Australia. So India has been close to my heart for many years as being the president of the company throughout that part of the world. And I've been living in the US for many decades, you know, and have had several stories there. But I want to take you a little bit out of the scope first. There is an interesting study presented by a certain Mr. Kramer. And before I do that, for the interest of everybody, I just want to situate what the European Confederation concerns. Just one slide. The rest you take it, you know, and you can check on the websites, you can find. But in Europe, there is 2 million private security guards, and there is more than 45,000 private security companies. And they serve, and the COAS serves as the knowledge center to the European Parliament and the European Commission for now almost 30 years, from which 20 years I've been president, and today, since 2 months, honorary president for life. Just to give you that, you can take the slides later, but it will help you. You can go through the websites, you can see what we are doing, and there is very interesting studies. Now about unemployment and violence. You can skip these slides. I can talk just at the end, the last slide, you will have all the information. Yes? Okay. Please skip the slides now. Okay. Yeah. The last slide. There's one more. That's for information if you want to get informed about the activities of COAS. Now, concerning the subject, unemployment and violence. There has been an interesting study by Professor Kramer, Christopher Kramer from the University of London, and I will read just three sentences out of that study. The notion that unemployment is a strong probably cause or motivating factor behind violence and violent conflicts is remarkably pervasive in the international development. It is believed that a lot of young people are joining gangs, driving people into violence, but what is certain is that this argument that young people are heavily involved in violence is actually not true. We don't have enough data. Since it's so difficult to measure young male unemployment in low-income countries and differently to compare it country by country, it is extremely difficult to say that there is a direct relation. However, it's rather out of a gut feeling that we have this and that we predict that. So unemployment across many low-income countries have no data whatsoever on young people. So when you look into Europe, and Europe in the economic aftermath of the crisis of 2008, we actually, our unemployment went down from 14% to 5% in 2019. But violence hasn't gone down. So how can you match these two, you know? And so it's purely a belief that we have, but today it's very, very difficult to establish a relation between unemployment and violence. It's extremely difficult. On top, it's not always unemployed people who are connected to violence. Many of the violent acts are done by people who are highly educated. And I will go through a couple examples later. So I look from a totally different angle than the previous speaker. Of course, I'm more interested from the private angle. And how do we say today, citizen companies and authorities, they have a wish list and they care for security more from other angles. It's not only the behavior, it's not only riots, it's not only what we see, but there's a lot more that interests the authorities today. It's extremism, it's espionage, it's radicalization, it's drugs, it's smuggling of animals, it's smuggling of goods, it's smuggling of organs, it's immigrant smuggling in Europe is today, it's tiger kidnapping, violence in traffic. So many things are leading to violence and are today cases of violence that it's very difficult to say it's only unemployment that would gather this, and that would be at the basis. We have a lot of violence about race, colors, religion. Is this related to unemployment? No. Is this related to being poor? No. Is this related to education? No. Many cases where it is related is very specific to the area, the country, it's to the society where it happens. And I will take a couple of practical examples. I was involved with 9/11. Of course, I was the president of the company that did the security on the American Flight 11 out of Boston. And that was the first aircraft that hit the towers. So I have been actually nearly living 6 months at the US Congress. I was hosted by the Sergeant of Arms at the Congress to have an office next to him and talk about how do we handle this? How is Europe handling these kind of cases compared to the US? Should that be still private security doing the screening at the airports, or should the government be involved? And as you clearly said before, for me, it's always a case of the government has to do research and see where's the problem, where is the problem, security analysis, I would say. And once you know where the problem is, you need to establish rules to combat the problem. And then the execution of the mission can either be done by the government themselves or either by private security. And as I've said clearly in the Congress, no system works if there is no clear oversight and control. So this is one of the cases. Now we have seen the cases very recently, January, the Capitol, the violence on the US democracy, actually, So is that by young people? No, it's by all kinds of people, low-class people, high-class people. It's fanatics about religion, ideology. There's a lot of other things than unemployment. We have seen in the US, Black Lives Matters. Is this related to unemployment? No, it's not related to unemployment. We have seen the violence in the Middle East. Is that related to unemployment? No, it's not. It's to religion, ideology. It's about territory. It's about a lot of other problems. And in Europe, we have seen very bad violence. We have seen the Paris case with Charlie Hebdo, with the attacks after the publicity on the Mohammed posters. We have seen the attacks in Brussels. I was in Brussels and I have people working at the airport who are doing the profiling of the passengers, who are doing document control, who were involved in the bombing and who were in the bombing. So I had casualties. I know what it is. And It was violent. Were these guys unemployed? No, these guys were not unemployed. They were just fanatics sponsored, by other means, but it had nothing to do with unemployment. I could give you some simple, basic cases. When I am at Brussels airport and my people are doing the security, I see very high up people from the European institutions. They come, they get nervous, they get violent in the row. It takes too long. They have waiting lines. They don't want their briefcases to be opened. Of course, they all feel that they are important. And they shout at the guards and they say, well, you're a stupid guy. I'm up high up. I'm the big shot, So violence, you can find it in so many different ways. In South Africa, I'm the president of South Africa for many years for our company. I have had patrol people being shot, clearly, deadly shot at night without reasons, just asking, what's the street here? Where can I go? Opening his window and being shot, just clearly. I've had people shot in cash handling, in cash and transit. And I remember in the mid-90s when I was doing cash handling and I had a big holdup on one of my vehicles. I was sitting in London for the insurance, and next to me was somebody sitting from South Africa. And he said, what's your problem? I said, well, I have been missing 5 million euros, in money, a package that disappeared. He said, no, it's nothing. I have every week one guy who is shot in cash handling, in South Africa. Is that only about unemployment? Yes, there is a lot of unemployment in South Africa, but it's not especially done by unemployed people. It's done by also people who are low paid. And we all know the salaries in private security in some countries are okay. When you are in Norway and you get 35 euros an hour, or you are in another country where you get in Poland 3 or 2 euros an hour, then you know how attractive it is to be involved with crime and to be involved with violence, how easy it is. Even if you're not unemployed, it is attractive. When I work now in the airports in Mexico and I worked in the airports of Colombia, if your guard is not properly controlled and being kept safe, he will be cut up and put in a bag if he doesn't get himself involved with the smuggling of drugs and other things. So out on the private side, I can tell you, violence. You could look at so many angles, and unemployment for me, yes, it's interesting. And it's absolutely a must, like the previous speaker has said. We need to do more studies. We need to be more active in how we manage these processes. No discussion about that, but I think we still have a long way to go, a long, long way to go. And we also are victim of the changes, fundamental changes in our society that leads to violence and that attracts violence. And I'll take a couple reasons for that. Globalization. Violence can be organized now internationally. They have communication systems. Violence is also through your IT, through your banking, how they get into your banking system. The difference between the rich and poor has increased. The number of rich compared to the number of people in the globe is certainly one point of attraction to violence and to being attacked. We should be open to ourselves when we think today. My parents, they never left home. They were always at home. They kept care of the elderly people in the family. You know, they never had holidays. They worked 365 days a year. Now we take holidays. We have a second home. We have second cars. We leave home. We travel, you know. So there is no control. There is no control, no what I would call social control anymore. Individualism. People are so individual. They don't even know their neighbors. They don't care about the neighbor's house, whether there is something, there is theft or somebody destroying goods. No, they're not even moving. When you see a car in the street, you know, our behavior is such that when an alarm system goes off from a car, who looks around and who goes to that car and who is looking around to find if somebody is doing something wrong? So we have so many examples. We also have an expectation of a long lifespan. We have medical assistance today who is that good that we live longer. Before, my grandparents, they died at the age of 50, 60. Now, we have an average lifespan expectation of 80, 81. That means we are vulnerable. We are open to be attacked. We are open to be robbed in our homes. You know, there's so many things. When I do the security at these companies like FedEx and DHLs and the UPSs, there's so many interesting goods who are open for theft. You know, of course, there's so many luxury goods available. It wasn't the case 40 years ago, 50 years ago, but today it's all there. When I did security at some warehouses where they keep mobile phones, you actually need a tank. A guard is not enough. They attack the guard. You have 5 electronic systems, 10 guards if you want. You know, in the company I worked, we don't even want to do that security anymore. Of course, we are not allowed always to carry arms, you know. So, and the police doesn't want to do it, you know. So it's not only unemployed, it's the attractiveness of money, easy money, drugs. That's today one of the bases we know, but drugs in all their forms, but prostitution, traffic of humans. Look at the examples. Maybe you don't always hear it in India, but in the trucks that move from Europe to the UK, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. These trucks are always full of people that immigrate and that want a new life. And they move to the UK, of course. It's much easier to live in the UK. Of course, they don't have ID cards. They only have passports. We have ID cards in Europe. So it makes life easier to be in the black market and to move away. So there is many reasons. And then in the fact of, and I will try to close up with that, the idea of the private-public partnership. I will come to that. In 1989, I had a meeting with our Minister of Interior in Belgium, and I asked him, I said, how do you see the private security? I said, that's my first question, but what I see is the governments have no money. Of course, I heard from the previous speaker, we should have more police force, we should have more people, but there is no money in many countries. The budgets are close to nothing. I hear all the police and officials only complaining about lacking of means and money, lacking of technology, lacking of people, you know. So I was discussing with him, I said, yes, I think that private security could play a role on the condition that we have a professional private security, that we are knowing how we recruit people, who is working in this industry, who are the owners of the companies, you know, to make sure that it's not doubtful persons who have somewhere established a security company, that we hire the people, we train them correctly, we do recurrent training, we do specialized training. Of course, today, a guard at an airport is a different guard than in a museum or in a nuclear power plant. So we are moving towards specialization. So I said to him, that's the reason how we can see this working together. The police being on the repressive side, we being on the preventive side. And in 2008, I managed to have a large seminar in France, hosted by Nicolas Sarkozy, by the president himself, who at that seminar declared officially for the first time, private security is the perfect extension of the public authorities. We need to have working together, and we need to research how we can do it. But it's got to be clear what everybody is doing. It's got to be clear what are the rules of the game. And at the end of the day, we need to have a control system on all of this. So, and that's what we are now doing in Europe. We are trying together with the European institutions to put standards, to put execution measures, and then we serve with them in every different kind of research they are doing. Aviation, maritime, nuclear, critical infrastructures, you name it. All these are different studies financed partly by the big companies who finance COES, you know, together with all the projects that we are doing on these matters. So, like I say, we are coming in a totally different environment. So to say there is a correlation, we all have a feeling there is a correlation between unemployment. To prove it, I have a little bit more difficulty. Of course, I don't have the data, and there is other people who can do that research. And I think that I will put that on the agenda of the European COES to get a study financed by the European Commission on the relationship between unemployment and violence and crime in Tazu here. So I'm sharing a little bit my experience out of my own, and it's different. It's not scientifically put together. And as you know me, we have a saying in our company, and please forgive me the saying. We say we don't talk bullshit. We stand in it. That's what we are saying. We stand with our feet into the problems, and we have to solve it. And if that is the contribution, please visit the websites from COES. You can ask me information through the channels of NISMAT. You can ask me for anything. I will try to help you and serve you with the knowledge that I have and many of my colleagues and previous colleagues, certainly, and professionals in my business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. What an illuminating talk you've given us, and lots to think about. And like I said, private security and the law enforcement and violence and crime all need to sort of get together to sort of put an end to the type of distress that people are getting into. I have a couple of questions that people are wanting to ask, and I would first go to General Lumba to ask his question. General Lumba, sir. Are you there, General Lumba?
Thank you, Pawan. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had the mute on and I didn't realize. Now, I must first thank both the speakers for a very erudite and excellent and very engrossing talk. Thank you very much. It's been a Friday evening well spent if I may say so. Right. My question goes to Dr. Vikram. Now, while talking of unemployment, the complete world at large has been very badly impacted during the COVID because of rising unemployment. Now that we are coming out of the COVID situation, I would like to ask Dr. Vikram as to what are the policy initiatives that can be tweaked by the government of India to minimize the impact of unemployment. Thank you.
Thank you, General Lumba, for the question. And I would like to address the question that yes, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and there are multiple schemes that the government of India has launched. Skilled India, that my university also is a part of the Skilled India movement, where we train, we not only educate into the higher degrees like the BTech, MTechs, LLBs and LLMs, but also skilling the youth who have the aptitude into the professions which will give you immediate employment. Electricians, lumber and the like, and masons, carpenters, and that is necessary. We even have graduates who are wanting to join the polytechnic that give them the hands-on training so that employment is not a problem. And rightfully so, the government only says employment is the only solution that will give the self-esteem to the youth. And again, I may or may not have the statistical data, but there are studies and repeated studies that would show that there is a correlation between unemployment, human well-being, and also crime, criminality, and violence. And to address that, perhaps I would compliment the government of India bringing Atmanirbhar Bharat, Skill India project, and also the various schemes of loans, and also interdependence of the farming activities also, that farmers, there are any number of loans available to the skilled workmen, the farm hands, and also the women who want to become first generation entrepreneurs. Financing of the startups. These are some of the very unique and revolutionary methods of arming and propelling the youth to stand on their own feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram. Thank you very much.
The next question, Jasjeet Ahluwalia wants to ask. Jasjeet.
Hi, good evening. Dr. Vikram, Mark, Bissons, thank you so much for a wonderful talk. My question is to Mark. Mark, when you go through, when a country decides to outsource its private security at the airports, a company like yours, or how do you personally work with governments to come up with the right framework so that this indeed can become a success? Because I've seen airports are, very close to the heart of any government, and securing the airport is a very, very important thing. And even in India, we have the CISF looking into the airports, and most countries. So how do you convince the government that this is indeed the right step and they can trust Mark's company, to protect the airport when indeed they're facing a challenge of stretching their law enforcement personnel, but they still don't want to give up on their hold on the airports?
Yeah, there is two answers to that. First of all, probably your situation is different from many other countries like in Europe. In Europe, most of the airports, I say most of the airports, are sold to private companies. That makes a huge difference. These private companies, they have no attachments directly or only partly to the governments. And that's number one. And they are looking for a cost saving. The private security in many cases is more flexible, has more a flexible regime, has also much lower wages in certain cases, and they trust also the knowledge that these big companies can carry from one airport to another. Otherwise, the airport is sitting with their own knowledge. They have to search everything. They have to look for the technology, for the improvement in the technology. Here, since we have a lot of experience, we are coming in with the experience that we have on nearly 300 airports across the world, and we know how effective we can be in gathering data. Of course, what's important today in the airports is to gather also the data when you have, for example, in the screening facilities, you have business passengers, you have holiday passengers, their behavior is different, the speed with whom you can screen them, the number of luggages that they have, it's all different. And you have to gather that data to optimize the production actually, and to minimize the number of staff that you have. This is number one. Number two, the police today, and you have heard it, there are so many activities where they need to keep care of, and these police officers, they want to use them for what they call their core business, and not to do a simple job like screening. You know, not that it's simple, but I simplify the idea here. You know, a repetitive job. I think that in many cases, the profile of the person that you need for this kind of security, then it's an overkill to use the police force. And I think that if there is a governmental oversight, it's enough. And the rest can be subcontracted. That's the main idea.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. We have another question coming up from Gurinder Singh, who's one of the sponsors for the event in the evening today. Gurinder.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vikram Singh and Mark Bissons for the valuable session. I have a question for Mr. Bissons. This is related to the airport security. There has been shows by protesters altering the operations in Hong Kong airport. So my question is, what measures can be taken, or what better can the security personnel would have done to avoid this situation?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly the situation of Hong Kong at this moment. Of course, Hong Kong was not accessible.
A year ago, almost a year ago.
Yeah, Hong Kong airport was not an accessible market for us. They used to have private security, and then the Hong Kong airport took over themselves. You know, it has to do often when you switch from a governmental service to a private service, people never like that. They don't like it. Of course, sometimes it's about salaries, but most of the time it's about flexibility in the job. And a lot of the discussion is that private security is asking for much more flexibility from the workforce. And if you change people who are used to do every day their 10 hours, 5 days a week, and then off 2 days, and then work 5 days again, you know, it's totally different stories than when you have people working 4 hours in the morning and they work 4 hours in the afternoon in split shifts. You know, often it's about the social environment that there is a discussion, salaries and social environment. And then, of course, it's a matter of governmental or private. It's a big difference. Does that answer a little bit your question? Or not?
But my question was like, what better the security personnel would have done to avoid or to substantiate that particular situation? Means they can just put a control on it.
What better mitigation they could have done?
Yeah, the mitigation about what? Was it about quality, or was it about the circumstances?
The circumstances.
The circumstances. Well, then they need to. They could have called me, for instance. Let's put it. They could have called me. I would have investigated the problem and tried to find a better solution. Of course, I never had similar problems, you know, which were unsolvable. I've had certainly problems during my career, but often it was only about labor negotiations. Only about labor negotiations where they tried to put pressure to have better better circumstances, better planning systems, or better salaries, for sure. You know, this kind of discussions I've had. I don't know exactly what the situation in Hong Kong. We should have a clear insight about how many hours do they have these people working? Is it 7 days a week work, or do they have times off? Often it has to do with the management also. In many cases, when there is good management, you avoid these kind of problems. You know, when people, you don't need to try to fight the fire afterwards. You need to avoid the fire, you know, and that means you need to have a constant talk and communication between the basis and the management. And I think in many cases, that's where things go wrong. That is my point. Be close to your people. You need to be close to your client, but you need to be close to your people also.
Thank you.
I have a question which I'll ask both the speakers. First to Dr. Vikram Singh, you've been in the police service at the helm of affairs, commanded over 200,000 policemen. What has been the most challenging situation that you faced in your career?
The most challenging operations and the most challenging situation I faced was facing international terrorism and facing banditry in the Chambal ravines. If I just have 30 seconds, Sayyid Muhammad Umar Sheikh, who was the number 2 of the Al-Qaeda, was arrested by us in Saharanpur when he abducted 2 American and 3 British hostages. And after a fierce encounter, which one inspector, Dhruv Yadav, died and 2 other constables died, we were able to successfully release safely the British and the American hostages. That encounter, and after the follow-up of Sayyid Umar Sheikh, the Kandahar hijacking happened. And when Sayyid Muhammad Umar Sheikh, along with 2 other terrorists, was handed over in Kandahar, that was a very difficult phase, the interrogation, the follow-up, the recovery of the weapons, as also the follow-up of banditry. And of course, films have been made on these operations, getting up the best technology in the world to get after these gangsters who were technologically, and as far as weaponry was concerned, generations ahead of us. And as Mr. Mark rightfully mentioned, that there is a cash crunch, there's a budget crunch, and things don't come to us easily. And it was only when calamity strikes us that we went after the budget, and the rest is history. We were, by the grace of the Almighty, we had the better of not only all the gangsters, but also Dadua and Tokia, who were into banditry even before I joined the service. And yes, that was very challenging, but yes, with public cooperation and by the grace of the Almighty, we came out successful. But they were very, very challenging. And indeed, we lost few of our brave soldiers, but that is the price we had, a very heavy price that we had to pay also.
Thank you very much. And now, Mark, you've been sort of handling $1 billion of revenue on a month-by-month basis. Would you be able to sort of give us as to what have your most challenging situations been in your career?
Well, my most challenging situation in my career has been in the 9/11 case, not about the case itself, but nobody was ready to assume responsibility of such a disaster. The question was that contractually, you have insurance, and private security has insurance, and governments often have insurance. But when the first tower was hit by that plane, we had a claim of $7.5 billion. Of course, that is the US. You know, and that means you actually have to insure yourself for third-party liability. That means for liability of something where you have no contract with. The owners of the towers and the people who were renting in the towers, they had no contracts with our company. It was one of the, it was American Airlines in that case here who had a contract with us. But everybody attacks everybody, you know, the US, you know. So for me, the challenging case after was how to take responsibility and up to which level can you accept contractual liability? That was for me the most challenging part in the aftermath. Of course, the first reaction of my shareholders was, we shut down all this security at the airports. We don't want to hear about it. Of course, we will take a risk to lose our business. But then in 2005, we found a solution, and we started again a new company, a new holding company, specialized. And that was for me challenging. That was one of the most challenging. The other one was actually to get the recognition, like I said, in 2008, when for the first time, like the president of France said, somebody in public, the private security has a place in our society, and we need to work together. That was for me a fantastic achievement in my career.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank both the speakers. And before I hand over the thing to the president to sort of give his closing remarks, I'd just like to mention that we have another webinar coming up on the 5th of February, and that's protecting children in cyberspace. It's a very important subject for all the families, for every child, and and as at NISBET, we feel that protecting society is a very, very important factor in life. Now, I would like to ask and request the president to give his closing remarks. So you got to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to wind up this particular webinar. As I mentioned right in the start, that there are, of course, multiple studies, but analysis is not uniform, that whether violence and unemployment are directly related, what is the contextual relation? That has been mentioned by both the speakers at one point or the other. But I'd like to mention one or 2 points which are very important from the point of the speaker number one. Dr. Vikram Singh referred to various labor unrest leading to violence. He will agree with me that labor violence was not, as he himself mentioned, due to violence, activity being intimidated, but the violence was a result of those agitation. Those labor agitation, that labor was already employed. They were getting pay. They were getting some wages. How and why they indulge in violence? Is there any management lack, or was there any hierarchical lack of management, or was there anything which was discriminatory with labor? These are various things which are not related with the unemployment. Secondly, rightly pointed out that we wake up only at the time when there's emergency. I refer to one that this, as he knows, that we have every district has a scheme which is called safety and security scheme. When the terrorism occurred in Punjab, and I went about to various districts, I found that these schemes was catching dust. Nobody had rehearsed these schemes because there was manpower is not there, police is employed somewhere, other resources were required for implementing scheme was not there. So we wake up only when the things happen. In India particularly, I am referring to that because I have experience. So therefore, as he rightly pointed out, that we have to be from time to time, particularly agencies which are concerned with the government has to wake up so that the violent incidents do not occur. Mark has rightly pointed out that he says, no, violence is not directly related, definitely not directly related to unemployment. He says violence is because of various other reasons. He has pointed out various reasons. He referred to the violence, the recent violence he referred to on the democracy of America. I agree with him. He has very pertinent point made that it is not unemployment. Probably it is love for more money. It is love for more position. And that is what happens in most of the societies. If you go to our tribal areas in our country, they are very contented. They have no money, but they are very contented societies. Unless they are allured, unless they are instigated, unless they are misled to get into violence. But when you come to the urban society, the layer of money, more and more layer of money results in more and more of violence. So on the whole, I would like to say that though violence, as both the speakers have pointed out, is not directly related to unemployment, but certainly crime is to great extent related to unemployment. He has referred to even crime in the domestic crime or other, because either discrimination with these people or low wages paid to them. So something happens whereby they get instigated and result in violence. Anyway, this is a matter of study. And I think the Chairman said that in due course of time, probably the NISBAT will, I think, launch some project and scheme where we have a research on this particular subject as to how far unemployment and violence are directly related. I don't think at this point there is any clear-cut difference, clear-cut contextual relationship given between the two. With these words, I thank both the speakers and all the delegates for having made this webinar a great success. And we have all learned a lot and enjoyed every moment of this. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bissons.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Did you like it a little bit?
Wonderful. I think.
Thank you very much.
I think very contextual and excellent.
Yeah.
Very good. Very, very good.
Okay. That was the idea.
Absolutely.
Say hello to the family. Thank you very much,
Thank
all
you,
of you.
and give my regards to Linda.
I will. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Mark's personal stories and facts are happening, but really very, very illuminating for all of us. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you.
Mark. I'll be in touch with you.
Have a safe evening. Thank you.
All right, sir. I'm leaving.
Okay. Bye, Pavan.
Bye, sir. Bye. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mandeep, Gurinder. Thank you, Gagan, for sponsoring the event, and your contribution is very valued to NISBAT. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Good night. Good night, Jasiji. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, General Lumbat. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Bye, Sifal, sir. Bye. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you.